Wait, ensure to subscribe, like, and comment on this story. Thank you. The first crack of thunder rolled over Pine Hollow like a warning shot. Dean Parker didn't flinch. He stood barefoot on the worn porch of his modest log cabin, his flannel sleeves rolled up, arms crossed, as he watched gray clouds swallow the sky. A storm was coming outside, and inside his life, inside laughter echoed. Rosie, his 8-year-old daughter, was dancing around the kitchen table, pretending the old broom was a microphone. "Daddy, look! I'm Beyoncé!" she squealed. Dean smiled, softening the hardened angles of his face. His life hadn't been easy. Hell, it had been anything but Rosie made the hard parts feel worth it. He walked in and ruffled her curls. "Beyoncé doesn't sing with peanut butter on her cheek," Rosie giggled. "She might if she's hungry." He wiped her cheek with a napkin. "Go wash up. The social worker's coming in 10. Her face fell. "Do you think she'll like me?" "Sweetheart," Dean knelt in front of her, "you're impossible not to love." The knock came earlier than expected, sharp, brisk, and laced with something final. Dean opened the door and paused. This wasn't their usual social worker. The woman who stood there looked like she belonged on the cover of a magazine, not the muddy steps of a rural cabin, sleek black heels, a navy-tailored suit, flawless skin that hadn't seen a single back road in years. Her presence made the room feel smaller, colder. "Mr. Parker." Her voice was cool and clipped. "I'm Julianne Carter. I'm here on behalf of the Carter Family Trust." Dean blinked. "Trust?" She stepped inside without waiting for permission, surveying the room with calculated precision. "Your daughter, Rosie, is biologically connected to my late brother. We're here to discuss custody." His breath caught. "You're here to what?" Julianne pulled out a letter from her bag, sealed with a lawyer's crest. "I believe your custody arrangement is about to change." Dean's hand curled into a fist at his side. Rosie peeked from the hallway, her smile gone. Julianne's eyes flickered to the girl. "I'd appreciate if she didn't overhear this." Dean stepped in front of Rosie protectively. "Anything you have to say, you say in front of me." She met his eyes, unflinching. "Then I suggest you sit down. This won't be a short conversation." Julianne opened the file in her hands, slid it across the table toward Dean, and said with quiet finality, "We have reason to believe that you're not fit to keep her." Dean's world tilted, and Rosie, unnoticed in the hallway, heard every word. Dean didn't sit. He stood rooted to the floor, every muscle tight, as if bracing for an unseen impact. His eyes scanned the document Julianne had slid across the table. Legal jargon swam before his eyes, but 3 words burned through it all. "Petition for custody." "This is a mistake," he growled. "Rosie's my daughter. I've raised her since birth." Julianne lifted one perfectly arched brow. "And I don't doubt your affection, but blood ties are binding. My family has a responsibility to her now." Dean slammed a calloused hand on the table. "Where were you when she was sick and burning with fever at 3 in the morning? When she cried for her mama for the 100th time and I had to explain death to a 5-year-old? Where were you then?" "I didn't know she existed until recently," Julianne said, too calm for the firestorm she was igniting. "Now I do, and I intend to do what's best for her." "Best for her." His voice cracked under the weight of disbelief. "She doesn't even know you." Julianne met his glare, a flicker of something human behind her business-like veneer. "She will." Just then, Rosie crept into the room, her voice barely a whisper. "Daddy?" Dean turned, his expression softening immediately. "It's okay. Baby, just go play for a bit." But she didn't move. Her small fingers clutched the edge of the doorway like a life raft. "Are you gonna send me away?" "No!" Dean barked, too fast, too desperate. Julianne knelt slowly, her movements controlled and deliberate. "Rosie, I'm not here to take you away. I'm just here to understand what's right for you." Rosie shrank back. "I don't know you." The silence that followed was suffocating. Dean gently picked up Rosie and held her close, his eyes locked on Julianne's. "You have no idea what you're doing to her, or to me." Julianne stood, brushing imaginary dust off her skirt. "I'm giving you until the custody hearing next week. You'll be served formal papers by then. I suggest you find legal counsel." Dean followed her to the door. "You think money gives you the right to rip apart a little girl's life?" "No," Julianne said, her eyes flinty, "but law does, and my family can afford both." She walked out without looking back, heels clicking against the porch wood like the ticking of a bomb. Later that night, the rain finally came. Dean sat on the couch in the dark, Rosie curled asleep on his lap, her tiny body trusting his arms to keep her safe. He stared at the fire, the letter still on the table beside him, untouched and venomous. His phone buzzed, a message from his lawyer, Mitch. "We've got a problem. Her legal team isn't just coming for partial custody, they're going for full parental rights termination." Dean's heart pounded. He looked down at Rosie, his world, his fight. Dean stood slowly, walked to the window, and looked out into the storm. In the distance, headlights appeared. Too soon, too unexpected. Someone was here. But it wasn't Julianne, and it wasn't friendly. Dean's fingers hovered over the light switch, heart pounding in rhythm with the thunder. The headlights outside cut through the rain like blades, unmoving, watching. He shifted Rosie gently onto the couch, grabbed the baseball bat from beside the door, and stepped out barefoot into the night. The car engine rumbled low. Then the door opened. A man in a black raincoat stepped out, holding an envelope high in one hand like a flag of war. "You Dean Parker?" the man barked over the storm. Dean nodded slowly, bat gripped tight. "I'm a process server." The man handed him the envelope, wrapped in plastic. "You've been officially served." Dean stared at it. "For what exactly?" The man backed away. "Full termination of parental rights. Carter and Langley." "Good luck, man." Dean's mouth went dry. Inside the envelope were more than papers. They were bullets, pages of accusations, some fabricated, others fragments of truths twisted into legal daggers. A familiar name caught his eye. Caroline Moore, his ex-Rosie's mother, the woman who left without a word, who vanished into addiction, chaos, and eventually death. Dean's jaw clenched. There, in clean black print, was a sworn affidavit. A letter Caroline had written before she died, filed in some legal vault Julianne's lawyers had unearthed. "If anything happens to me, and Dean Parker is still the same reckless man I once knew, I don't want him raising our daughter alone." Dean stumbled back into the house, eyes burning. "Daddy!" Rosie stirred. "I'm here, baby," he said softly. But he wasn't, not really. His mind was spinning backward, back to the fire, back to the night he almost lost everything. He hadn't told anyone, not even his lawyer, that he'd once been arrested for negligence after a house fire nearly killed Caroline. Charges had been dropped. He was innocent. But in legal battles, innocence didn't always matter, and now it was being used against him. Meanwhile, across town, Julianne sat in her high-rise office, hands trembling as she stared at an old photo on her desk. Caroline, younger, laughing, wild-eyed, free. Her sister. She whispered into the silence, "You should have told me you had a daughter." Her assistant knocked and entered. "Miss Carter, you asked for the full background on Dean Parker." Julianne nodded. "Yes, leave it there." As the assistant left, Julianne opened the folder. Arrest record. Custody dispute, substance rehab check-ins, not his, but tied to someone he once lived with. A sinking feeling curled in her stomach. She closed the file and stared out the window. Maybe this isn't about Rosie's best interests anymore. Maybe it's about guilt or revenge, or maybe both. Back at the cabin, Dean's phone rang again. His lawyer's voice was tight. "Dean, we have another problem." "What now?" There's a judge on the case with ties to Julianne's family. And unless we act fast, they're moving the hearing up to 3 days from now. Dean sank into the couch, numb, until Rosie climbed into his lap, wrapping her small arms around him. "Are you gonna leave me, Daddy?" Dean held her tight, whispering into her hair. "Never." But outside the window, a drone camera hovered silently, recording everything. Julianne stared at her reflection in the boardroom glass, the skyline behind her a blur of lights. Her team talked numbers, expansion, global licensing, but all she could hear was Rosie's laugh, a laugh that sounded just like Caroline's. She'd visited the girl once, unannounced, under the guise of a welfare check. Rosie had opened the door in pink rain boots and a chocolate-smeared face. "You're pretty," Rosie had said bluntly, "like a cartoon boss lady." Julianne had smiled despite herself. "You're not what I expected," Rosie had shrugged. "That's what Daddy says too, about me." It had cracked something open in Julianne, a fault line long buried beneath executive polish and courtroom strategy. She didn't expect to like the girl, or worse, love her. 2 days before the hearing, Dean paced the living room, dark circles under his eyes. His lawyer had found a loophole, but they needed a witness. Someone who could testify that Dean had changed, that he was a good father despite the past. Dean flipped through his phone contacts. One name remained, Caleb Thorne. The man he hadn't spoken to in years, his former best friend, the man who used to date Caroline, the same man who was there the night of the fire, and the one person who knew the truth, that Dean had pulled both, Caroline and Caleb, out of that burning house before the flames swallowed the roof. Dean hit call. The line rang once, twice. "Dean," Caleb's voice rasped on the other end. "I was wondering when you'd crawl out of the shadows. I need your help." There was silence. Then a bitter laugh. "You think after all these years, after everything that went down, I'm just gonna vouch for you?" Dean's grip on the phone tightened. "You owe me, Caleb. I saved your damn life." "Yeah," Caleb said quietly. "And then you disappeared." Dean's jaw clenched. "I had a kid to raise, alone." Another pause. Then Caleb sighed. "Send me the court date." Elsewhere at Julianne's townhouse, Rosie sat at the kitchen counter, kicking her heels. As the housekeeper braided her hair, Julianne watched from the doorway, frozen by the scene's quiet simplicity. Rosie glanced up. "Why don't you smile more?" Julianne blinked. "Excuse me? You're always doing this." Rosie mimicked Julianne's signature deadpan face. "Like you're thinking too hard." Julianne cracked a grin despite herself. "You're a cheeky little thing. I think you're just sad," Rosie said innocently. "Daddy's sad too, but he tells jokes when he is. You just get quiet." Julianne swallowed the lump in her throat. No 5-year-old should see that much. Later, that night, Julianne couldn't sleep. She sat alone with the court file, flicking through Caroline's photo, the old restraining order, the evidence of Dean's arrest, and her lawyer's closing recommendation: play to the narrative, paint Dean as unpredictable, mention the fire, use the affidavit. But something in her twisted. What if Caroline was wrong? What if Dean had changed? And what if she was about to rip a child away from the only real family she had? Her phone buzzed. A new message. From Caleb Thorne. Subject: before you go to court, you should know the truth about the fire, about Caroline, and about why Dean really disappeared. Julianne opened the attachment, and what she saw made her drop the phone. The next morning, Dean opened his front door, expecting Caleb. Instead, Julianne stood there, pale, eyes rimmed red. In her hand, the file Caleb had sent. Her voice trembled. "We need to talk." But behind her, 2 men in suits stepped from a black SUV. A court officer raised a document. "Dean Parker, we're here to take temporary custody of Rosie Carter." The courtroom was packed. A stale hush clung to the walls as Dean Parker sat at the defendant's table, his hands clenched, his daughter watching from the gallery, unaware this day might end with her in someone else's arms. Across from him sat Julianne Carter, poised, polished, but haunted. The judge adjusted his glasses. We're here to determine legal custody of minor Rosie Parker, biological daughter of the late Caroline Carter. Petition filed by Ms. Julianne Carter, aunt of the child. Response filed by Mr. Dean Parker. Dean's lawyer stood. Your Honor, before arguments proceed, we have a surprise witness, one who can speak directly to Mr. Parker's fitness as a father and shed light on the tragic events that brought us here. The judge raised a brow. Proceed. Caleb Thorne stepped forward. Julianne stiffened. Caleb took the stand, voice tight with guilt. I was Caroline's ex and Dean's best friend, the night of the fire. It wasn't what the police report says. Dean looked up slowly. I was drunk, Caleb admitted. Caroline and I got into it. Dean came to take Rosie home. Caroline was spiraling. She'd left Rosie alone in the bath. Dean lost it, said he was done covering for her. He swallowed hard. She locked herself in the bedroom with a bottle of pills. Dean kicked the door in. That's when the candle tipped over. It spread fast. I froze. Dean. He pulled her out. Then me. The gallery murmured. Caleb's voice cracked. He saved us both, but Caroline, she relapsed again after. The fire wasn't his fault, but she blamed him anyway, wrote that letter in spite. Dean's throat burned. His shame wasn't guilt. It was silence. All those years protecting the memory of a woman who'd broken under pressure. Julianne's lawyer rose. Why didn't Dean report this version before? Caleb looked to Dean. Because he was trying to protect Rosie. From the truth, from the legacy of a mother who couldn't stay sober. Julianne's eyes glistened. For the first time, she saw Dean not as an obstacle, but as a man who had been fighting to preserve a broken family with nothing but love and grit. She stood. Your Honor, she said softly, I'd like to withdraw my petition. Gasps rippled. Her lawyer turned to her, stunned. Julianne, I came into this thinking I was saving my niece, Julianne said. But it turns out she already had someone who would walk through fire for her. She turned to Dean, and for once no armor in her gaze, just truth. He's not perfect, but he's hers. Outside the courthouse, the air was still, like the world had paused to breathe again. Dean crouched beside Rosie, who clutched his neck tight. You did good, kiddo, he whispered. Julianne approached, hands trembling. I'm sorry, she said, voice catching. For what I almost took from you. Dean met her eyes. You were just trying to hold on to your sister. Julianne looked down. She wasn't who I thought. He nodded. Neither was I. Silence settled between them, but not cold, not anymore. I meant what I said in court, she added. She's lucky to have you. And she's lucky to have you, Dean said. If you want to be around, Rosie would like that. So would I. Julianne blinked. You mean that? He gave her a small smile. Maybe she needs both of us. 1 week later, Dean's porch Rosie ran through the yard, shrieking with laughter as Julianne chased her, heels ditched for sneakers. Dean watched from the steps, arms folded, a slow grin creeping across his face. Julianne plopped beside him, breathless. Turns out I'm not great at tag, she muttered. Dean chuckled. You'll learn, she nudged him playfully. You think we'll make this work, all of us? He glanced at her. We already are. As the sun dipped low, casting gold across the yard, Rosie called out, You guys, let's play house. Julianne looked at Dean, one brow raised. What role do I get? Dean smirked. Ooh, guess we'll find out. Epilogue. 1 year later, the Parker house had changed. The chipped porch steps were freshly painted. A tire swing hung from the old oak tree out front. The garden bloomed with tulips Rosie had planted herself, with a lot of dirt, chaos, and help from Julianne. Dean stood at the grill, flipping burgers in a faded flannel, his hair a little longer, the weight in his shoulders gone. Dad, Rosie called. I set the table, even folded the napkins. He smiled, warm and proud. "That's my girl!" Julianne appeared at the screen door, barefoot, her sundress catching in the breeze. She carried lemonade in one hand and a chocolate cake in the other. Dean raised an eyebrow. "Lemonade and cake? You trying to win her over again?" Julianne smirked. "Can't be too careful. She's fickle. Yesterday I got demoted to friend of the family." Dean chuckled. "Harsh." Julianne looked out at Rosie, who was now setting up a tea party for her dolls under the tree. "She's okay, isn't she?" she asked quietly. Dean turned to her. "She's more than okay. Because of you." Julianne met his eyes. "No, because of us." They stood in the quiet moment, not rushing it, not naming it, but letting it settle between them like the soft promise it was. Later that night, Rosie was asleep. The moon hung full and low over the hills. Dean and Julianne sat on the porch steps, two empty glasses between them. He handed her a folded piece of paper. "What's this?" she asked. "It's from Caroline," Dean said. "The real letter, the one she left before the fire. I didn't show it in court. Thought maybe you weren't ready." Julianne's hands trembled slightly as she opened it. Caroline's handwriting danced across the page. Raw, sincere, apologetic. She'd written about the drinking, the pain, the way she pushed Dean away even when he loved her best, and how she wanted Rosie to grow up knowing love, even if it didn't come from her. Julianne swallowed hard. She was trying in her own way. Dean nodded. "We both were." Julianne wiped her eyes. "I think she'd be proud of Rosie. Of you." Dean looked at her. "And of you." She leaned against his shoulder just a little. No words, no promises, just presence. And maybe that was enough. Inside, Rosie whispered in her sleep, "I love you, Mommy." And somewhere in the stillness, love answered back. Wait, ensure to subscribe, like, and comment on this story. Thank you.